All right, welcome back. This is Mark with Realize the Self, and in today's episode, we're going to continue the book read. And where we went off, finished off, was chapter 1, page 9. And so we're just going to continue from there and see how far we go. Maybe we get to chapter 2. We'll see. All right, so finished off Alexandria. Another one of the most remarkable cities of antiquity is Alexandria in Egypt. Founded by Alexander the Great in 331 BCE, it was built to be one of the greatest centers of learning and philosophy of its time. Many Greek philosophers, along with scholars from around the world, came to Alexandria to study ancient knowledge and the secrets of the universe. The city was home to one of the most largest ancient world libraries and is still considered and was considered the capital of knowledge and learning at that time. As the centuries passed, the great library of Alexandria was repeatedly set ablaze and partially destroyed by successive invaders. Finally, a massive tsunami in 365 CE, triggered by a powerful earthquake in the Mediterranean, devastated what remained and caused the library's precise location to vanish from historical record. In that catastrophe, we also lost the tomb of Alexander the Great, which Egyptian archaeologists are still searching for today. Now, not only are there striking similarities between Hindu and Egyptian deities, but also between Greek and Hindu gods. The ancient Greeks were deeply familiar with the maxim, know thyself, and even elaborated on it through the writings attributed to such writers or authors as Hermes Trismegistus. Most likely, these teachings were brought from India. Next topic, page 10, Gospel of Thomas, Indian roots. Further along in history, we have Christian teachings from the Gnostic texts suggesting a similar concept to Atman, or the true self, as that of ancient India. In the Gospel of Thomas, verse 3, Jesus says, "When you know yourselves, then you will be known, and you will understand that you are the children of the living Father. But if you do not know yourselves, then you will live in poverty, and you are the poverty." The Gospel of Thomas can be traced back to 130 to 180 AD, hundreds of years after the Greek and Egypt know thyself maxim was, and much later after the concept of Atman from the Vedic texts. It is responsible to conclude that the people discussed here freely shared this profound knowledge with one another. Vedic texts most likely reached Egypt from India. Then some of the Greek scholars that did travel to Egypt took it back to Greece, and from there it may have been part of the foundation for the Gnostics. As mentioned, though, the Apostle Thomas went to India himself and learned the teachings of the ancient Vedic texts. At the turn of the millennia, the Apostle Thomas is confirmed by numerous sources to have traveled to India and even studied at the famous Taxila University. This makes perfect sense when one compares the secret sayings of Jesus in the Gospel of Thomas with the Upanishadic teachings on the self. Jesus said to them, "When you make the two into one, and when you make the inner like the outer, and the outer like the inner, and the upper like the lower, and when you make male and female into a single one, so that the male will not be male, nor the female be female, then you make eyes in place of an eye, hand in place of a hand, a foot in place of a foot, an image in place of an image, then you will enter the kingdom." Gospel of Thomas 22. It's worth noting that in Egypt there are Egyptian hieroglyphic inscriptions that read Smai Tawi, or uniting Upper Egypt with Lower Egypt, which could be a reference to self-realization. We'll go over that a little bit later. I also add in the 4 Mahavakyas of the Upanishads. Prajnanam Brahmam. Consciousness is God. Aham Brahmasmi, I am God. Tat Svam Asi, thou art God. Ayam Atma Brahma, the self is God. In the Kena Upanishad 2, verse 1 through 3, if you think you have understood Brahman well, you know it but slightly, whether it refers to you, the individual self, or to the gods. So then, is it to be investigated by you, the pupil, even though I think it is known? I do not think that I know it well, nor do I think that I do not know it. He who among us knows it, and he too does not know that he does not know. To whomever it is not known, to him it is known. To whomever it is known, he does not know. It is not understood by those who understand it, it is understood by those who do not understand it. Gnosticism roots. There seems to be some crossover from Gnosticism and Vedic teachings of the self. In fact, the Vedic origins seem to be the main driver of the teachings of the Egyptian and Greek mystery schools. Buddhism and Gnosticism, as noted in the first chapter. One of the great Hindu philosophers, Swami Vivekananda, even states that the entire world's philosophy originated from India. It's a fascinating idea that has some credible evidence to support this. Not long ago, while I was riding my bike and listening first to the Ashtavakra Gita and then switching over to the Gnostic texts like the Gospel of Thomas, I was struck by how similar they sounded. The ideas in both clearly overlapped. I was astounded. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus is unmistakably teaching non-duality. He is speaking directly about emptiness and nothingness. The kingdom, he describes, is none other than self-realization. Many of his teachings feel less like ordinary parables and more like Zen-style koans, short, paradoxical statements designed to shatter conceptual thinking and provoke direct awakening, which koans are designed to do. Look at this from the Gospel of Thomas 17, where Jesus said, I will give you what no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, what no hand has touched, and what has not entered into the heart of man. What is cannot be seen, cannot be heard, and cannot be touched. It is the true self, beyond all illusory senses and beyond the mind. This is a direct reference to self-realization. Here's a brief historical timeline for reference. It is by no means complete, but it serves as a useful starting point. These dates are estimates as there is always margin of error, especially the further back one goes in antiquity, where the evidence becomes increasingly murky. This timeline below is based on the working hypothesis that ancient wisdom flowed from India to Egypt, rather than the conventional theory of Egypt influencing India, or the alternative idea of Atlantis influencing Egypt. Who knows, perhaps the ultimate origin of the world's most ancient structures and teachings is Atlantean or Lemurian. I simply don't have enough evidence yet to assert that. For now, I'm proceeding with the hypothesis of an Indian origin, specifically linked to the Indus Valley civilization. And so there's a picture that shows the timeline called A Journey Through Time and Thought, and it starts with India, 8000 BC, Egypt, 3150 BC, ancient Greece, 800 BC, and then we go to Taxila, that university, 600 BC, and then the Gnostics around 100 AD, then I add in the Templars and Cathars, 1255 AD, and then the modern day would be the Nag Hammadi texts that were found in 1945. To summarize, we can theorize that the origin of self-realization, or to know thyself, may very well stem from ancient Indus Valley civilization as early as 8000 BCE, then made its way into Egypt in 3150 BCE, then into ancient Greece around 600 BCE by way of the great University of Taxila, then into the modern Bible and Gnostic texts over the turn of the millennia, nearing 100 AD. That's as far as I could trace it, as the further we go deeper in antiquity, as we mentioned, the scarcer and less certain information becomes. Also, I completely omitted out ancient Mesopotamia, but upon examination, there are definitely major interactions between the IVC, or Indus Valley civilization, and them, as seen by an ample amount of physical evidence, as well as the close geographical proximity between those two. We have a myriad of connections between Egypt and India, as well as Greece and India, that are undeniable. That's not to mention the many connections between Vedic teachings, probably stemming from Taxila. to many parts of the world, including China and its teachings on Taoism. We can write an entire book just on the subject and go into much greater detail on the origins and interpretations of Know Thyself and its profound significance around the world. I added a little extra here, and this is from Egyptians came from Atlantis, and this is from a Reddit post. Among those influenced by Akkadian learning were such seminal individuals as Pythagoras and Moses. Ancient Egyptian texts speak of 7 sages who were survivors of Atlantis and planned the monuments and pyramids of Egypt. They were divine beings who knew how the temples and sacred places were to be created. The sages were divine survivors of a previous cataclysm who made a new beginning. Originally, they came from an island, the homeland of the primeval ones, the majority of whose divine inhabitants were drowned. Arriving in Egypt, the survivors became the builder gods who fashioned in the primeval time the lords of light, the ghosts, the ancestors who raised the seed for gods and men, the senior ones who came into being at the beginning, who illumined this land when they came forth unitedly. The correlation with Gurdjieff's description of the second trans-Apollonian perturbation which caused the island of Atlantis to enter into the planet, and with the surviving members of Beelzebub's tribe and the society of Akkadians who wrestled in the region of Ethiopia and Egypt. Not to discredit the incredible work of historians and archaeologists, but I personally find the India-Egypt connections far more convincing simply because we have vastly more information and evidence supporting this. If substantial physical or written proof and evidence of Atlantis ever surfaced, that would of course change the discussion, but as of now we have very little concrete evidence to work with. Atlantis may have existed somewhere and still awaits discovery. For the moment, it remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of the world. Chapter 2, The Happiness Myth. Some time ago, I was running races, traveling the world, and working long hours. A lifestyle that filled a good chunk of my life. I carried this idea that if I could just visit more countries and see more places, I would be happy. If I competed in more races and won more of them, I would be happy. If I made more money, I would be happy. The key word there is would, always pushing happiness into some future moment once the next goal is attained. The versions of happiness that society sells us as reality are nothing but myths. They are illusory concepts that keep us chasing tomorrow and blind us to happiness, which is in the now, the present moment, where true happiness actually resides, in the self. Happiness is our very existence. Happiness is our nature. I didn't realize this at the time pursuing all those endeavors, as most of us don't. Most don't realize it because we are so caught up in the dream of this world, chasing illusions of happiness. It's when we stop looking outside of ourselves, when we stop chasing the mirage of happiness, that we find happiness. Happiness is who we are and has nothing to do with anything outside of us. It's not that we find anything, it's that we simply realize what we already are. We are happiness itself. Happiness is the self, and you are that. The gift. Many years ago, after years of competitive sports, my body simply said no more. A genetic switch was flipped where my iron levels got higher and higher. At the time, I didn't know why I felt so exhausted all the time. I didn't understand why my brain was so foggy. I didn't understand why my whole body hurt and I could barely get out of bed. I had a hard time in college studying with all the brain fog and cognitive disruption. Luckily, around this time, a gift presented itself to me. I met a wonderful partner and adopted me, a wonderful cat named Lucy. Lucky Lucy seems to flow quite nicely. That was probably one of the darker periods of my life, being in bed half the time feeling like death and not having a release for my pent-up emotions from non-favorable emotional programs that were installed when I was a kid. I ran less and less and competed less and less, and my body could not deal with the physical stress of training and running so much. My mind was in disarray, and I faltered, as most do when they reach the end of one part of life's journey and the beginning of another. Luckily, at this time as well, I got more and more interested with helping out at races rather than competing in them. Oddly enough, my heart seemed to fill itself with love, kindness, and compassion more and more as I served others rather than competed with them. The more I helped others, cheered them on, and encouraged them, the better I felt. I never really understood why I felt so good after doing this. I would feel like I was in a higher energy state, like almost on a different frequency, as though I was floating on air, ecstatic. Later, while doing neurofeedback brain training, I experimented with thinking positive and negative words, and I found something interesting. The more negative words I thought, the more my alpha brainwaves went down and beta went up. While the more positive words I thought, the more my alpha as well as gamma went up and beta went down. Alpha brainwaves are the slower, more relaxed, feel-good brainwaves, while beta are the higher frequency, agitated, anxiety, fight or flight type of brainwaves. It finally dawned on me sometime later that the mind cannot tell the difference between negative or positive words towards oneself or towards others. The brainwave changes are the same if the words are directed at oneself or if they are directed at others. Maybe there really is something to this whole idea, that notion that we are one. This also gave me a greater understanding as to why I felt so good helping people and cheering people on each weekend. This goes to show the reality is we really are each other. This is a big lesson that shows us that negative gossip or speaking ill of anyone can hurt us by decreasing alpha brainwaves and increasing beta brainwaves. That saying, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all, is quite on point. For example, if you go on social media, you will see so many negative comments. People often don't realize that they are causing pain both to others and to themselves, because technically there are no others. We are all connected. There's no doubt about it. For hours on the weekends, I would serve others by giving them water or snacks and cheering them on with positive words and encouragement, as well as taking their pictures. Service and words are two of the love languages, and some say service is one of the most powerful. In fact, there's a whole branch of yoga dedicated to serving others called karma yoga. While serving others, I felt so good, almost like I was blissed out in another dimension. A little time after coming home, I would have a lower energy, emotional programmed response and start to snap out of the high I felt. Someone would irritate me, whether driving or doing something that annoyed me, and I would get upset, or better to say, the fictitious ego would get upset as a program was triggered to invoke an emotional response. The issue with the current state of the world is our disconnection from each other and from the self. We can go from disconnection to connection, and realizing the self is definitely a huge part. If the world realized the self, then everything would be a perfect utopia. That would probably never happen or be the case, because this world was not built for the freedom of self-realization. It was built to keep us in a beta brainwave state, as we will see later, with numerous data points and evidence to support this. And a quote by Ram Dass: as we grow in consciousness, there will be more compassion and more love, and then the barriers between people, between religions, between nations will begin to fall. Social shaping. Society tells us what we need to do or be in order to be happy. The issue with that is it teaches us that there is some external source of happiness, which is disingenuous. The truth is, happiness is found in the ever-present now and here. Although it is worth noting the self is beyond all senses of time and space, and now is simply a reference point for the mind to be able to grasp the idea, the self is beyond all space and time. But the present, here and now, is the closest way to describe the self, so it will work for the purposes of this book. The idea that one has to make a certain amount of money, drive a certain car, own a certain house, travel to a certain country, find the perfect partner, win a race, etc. is a fruitless, never-ending trap of the world, and the world is full of traps. Sure, one will find temporary, non-lasting happiness and pleasure in fleeting experiences and possessions, but the permanent form of happiness and peace will never be found until one goes inside themselves to the source, to the self. Unfortunately, society has shaped and molded people subconsciously, having them chase these illusions of happiness and pushing one further away from the self. Self-realization is the only pursuit worthwhile in this life. We must realize who we are beyond thought, beyond the mind, and beyond the body. This is the only path to true and lasting happiness. Most people have experienced fleeting moments of the self through some form, yet they do not fully understand what these moments signify. There may have been a quieting of thought and an anchoring in the present moment brought about by one of many things, such as exercise, encounters with extreme beauty, non-understanding that transcends the mind and induces stillness, complete surrender and letting go, a near-death experience, and so on. As Ramana Maharshi said, and this cannot be reiterated enough, the only worthwhile pursuit of this life is to realize the self. There is simply nothing anyone needs to do for happiness except realize the self. It is here, right now, and you are that. Of course, we all have our jobs, careers, families, and whatever it may be, and that's going to keep happening regardless of self-realization or not. What does change is that there's no more mental resistance upon anything that anyone does any longer. There's a great saying that illustrates this. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The benefits of self-realization do not end with permanent abiding happiness. They transcend the very boundaries of comprehension and understanding. They help others in profound ways by shining a light on the path out of worldly misery and suffering. How many are stuck in the same routine, same thinking and programming, immersed in the madness of the world and don't know how to escape? Probably the majority of the population chases these short-term pleasures as a means of escapism and as a means of an unconscious pursuit of the self. True escape of bondage is only through self-realization, and the self is the key to ultimate freedom. Self-realization is the only way to escape this world of madness and insanity. No matter what one does, they will never change the world. One can only change themselves by realizing the self. Insanity is often described as doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Are you ready to break free from the cycle of insanity and do something different? Are you ready to realize who you truly are? Are you ready for ultimate freedom and to escape from the bondage of suffering? It is so simple, yet so difficult, because very few people even know about self-realization, let alone teach it. There's so many self-help gurus out there that convince anyone and everyone to do this or to do that. You need this or you need that to be happy, when in reality, they are not happy themselves. They're selling a mirage, an illusion, and yet the masses eat it up like candy because everyone else is doing it and the crowd likes to follow the crowd. It's the blind leading the blind. In Matthew 15:14, he says, "Let them alone, they be blind leaders of the blind. And if the blind lead the blind, both shall fall in the ditch." To realize the self, one must go against the crowd. One must have the courage to turn away from the path of normalcy and break free from the prison of the mind and societal conditioning. This not only can be done, it must be done if one is ever to realize the self. Another way to see it is as layers of societal norms and conditioning wrapped tightly around us. These layers must be shattered into pieces to reveal the true self beneath. There will be challenges and difficulties as one begins a journey, and all the way to the end, the challenges will continue. But I promise you that if you pursue the self with all your heart, the journey will be worth it. And one will finally see the true, radiant, effervescent, shining self. The self that shines brighter and more radiant than a million suns times a million. You are that. Be happy. Be free. Thank you for being here. And those were the first 2 chapters of the book, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give us a like and a subscribe, and have a wonderful day. See you on the next one.